Alright folks, second part of my video about Bruce Lee, new developments in Bruce Lee. So again, to reiterate, I said at one point that if I've said everything that I think I could have said about Bruce Lee, and unless something new comes out, I'm going to not make many more videos. And speak of the devil, more new stuff came out. I did talk about Dominic Izzo and some of the ludicrous things he's claimed about Bruce Lee. Now let's move on to something else. There was a video. It said it was 2023 new video of unseen footage from Game of Death, and in it, Danny Inosanto is fighting. I don't know the martial artist's name, but he looks Chinese and not Korean, but I know he's a Hapkido black belt. And he has the Hapkido black with the white cross stitches gi, which I always thought that looked cool. And he comes in there fighting Danny Santo with what's basically a log. And it's not necessarily new Bruce Lee footage, but it's new Game of Death footage. So it certainly is associated with him. And, I have seen the uncut fights with Jihan Jay, and also some rehearsal footage that was shot near Bruce's house in Hong Kong. And so the log scene, I can see why it was cut. It's kind of ludicrous. Someone coming with this heavy, clunky log. It takes forever to move it and swing it, and Danny Santo, pit, pat, 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 and hits him up with those sticks, and then he drops the log, and then Danny Santo drops his sticks, and he does what is basically Kenpo karate, right? It looks like nothing else but, a variation of five swords, and the one takedown, I think it's called Leap of Death or something like that, right? And it just makes me reiterate something I've said in the past, which is that Game of Death, the version of Game of Death that I saw in the movie theater and later on in my life, on video, was a horrible leftover of what could have been, and it cheated Jihan Jay. Didn't necessarily cheat Danny Inosanto, because his, the fight that they kept in was very good, right? Although the part where he did the Kenpo, that would have changed a whole two generations of martial artists, right? Because Bruce Lee, the classical mask, blah, 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 and then one of his top guys, is doing really obvious Kenpo karate. So, but Jihan Jay, the unedited fight scene of Jihan Jay and Bruce Lee was far more back and forth. And the parts where Jihan Jay was fighting the other companions of Bruce Lee before Bruce Lee went one-on-one with him was a fantastic example of Hapkido, right? You also have to realize that Bruce Lee was in his 30s, his early 30s. Jihan Jay was at least 40, if not a little bit older, when it was filmed. Jihan Jay had come back from military service. I think he definitely served in Vietnam with the ROC Army, I think, and also as a hand-to-hand combat instructor. But, we're talking a guy who possibly had a body count, right, before he met Bruce Lee. And while in terms of flexibility and speed, he may not have been at his absolute peak, I think in terms of his Hapkido ability and the subtlety and the efficiency of Hapkido and its circularity, he may not have even reached his peak, but he was peaking, right? And honestly, I don't know if it was intentional by the studio, right? Even the way Bruce Lee finishes him off, it's a bit insulting, but he's a bad guy. He has to die, I can see why Joe Louis was like, I don't want to be in Return of the Dragon because you're going to kill me, and I'm a big, huge American karate champion, and you're a little Asian guy, and I don't believe that could be done. Again, Joe Louis, not a tactful guy. Bruce Lee, not a tactful guy. So, all the log scene makes me think about is how good some of the villains and bad guys Bruce Lee worked with, right? Jihan Jay. If you see him in Hapkido, his movie about Hapkido, I think Angela Mao Ying and Sammo Hung were in it. I would really like to see it in HD. I've never seen it in HD on a big screen. I think that would be amazing. But I know for a fact, like sometimes you have an art that gets founded, and the first generation of black belts, they contribute. A lot of them already came with black belts in something else, and they contribute their intelligence, their vocabulary, their martial vocabulary, their training methods, and their energy and passion. And that first generation is something to see. And then the second generation, well, it's hard to transfer that. One organization that successfully transferred that was the JKA. When JKA Karate became what it was, post Funakoshi, it stayed what it was, and it maintained its standard and its distinct technicality. Now, Hapkido, I have seen so many different varieties of Hapkido. I have seen lots of footage. I've seen it in person, and some assembly required. You know, there's variants. There's some Hapkido I've seen looks fantastic, and some I've seen I'm like, well, it's a bit more showy and flashy, right? And some Hapkido people, you know, some Koreans, I've seen them like, that guy's badass, and I have no doubt that he's been in real altercations and used his Hapkido and used it well. Others, I'm like, looks good, but I don't see the combat in it. Like, I see the techniques, but I don't think that person or that method is equal to what else I've seen, right? But Jihan Jay, you can just tell, he too was a martial genius. He was the, if not the, one of the driving forces behind what Hapkido became. His Sinmu Hapkido went worldwide, and I don't know if he's still alive, but I mean, there's footage of him in his 70s, still teaching, still moving, and still bringing it to another generation. So, yeah, this Bruce Lee video wound up being about Jihan Jay, but I will say, Danny Santo, his Filipino martial arts, his Kenpo Karate, you see him, he's young, he's, you know, diesel, and over time I've gotten to appreciate all the attributes of Danny Santo that when I first saw Game of Death, I'm like, well, he's a minor character who gets killed because he doesn't show up till the end. I didn't know the history behind the movie and what it was supposed to be like. I've just appreciated the raw talent, and he's still here. He's in his 90s. He is still here. He is in his 90s and still learning and going strong and teaching. And if he had another 90 years, I think the world would be better off, right? But he's one of my inspirations. I'm not done with Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I need to find a way to train under circumstances that are acceptable to me, with people that are acceptable to me. It may not happen here in Columbia, Missouri. I've got a membership to Gracie Academy online, and I really haven't been able to find a training partner and a matted floor area, but I am working on it. And Danny Santo and Jihan Jay, you are my inspirations, that's for sure.